This is The Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral.com.
Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet World, West Alabama. How are you doing today on a Monday? Welcome into the Joe Gaither Show right here on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. Of course, I am your host, Joe Gaither, and you guys are watching us all on YouTube, on Facebook, or on Twitter at Joe Gaither6, or you're watching us on the BamaCentral YouTube channel. I appreciate everybody who has subscribed to any of those outlets, whether it be the BamaCentral YouTube channel or any of my social media machines at Joe Gaither6. And, of course, you can always find the show if you just want to listen to it in your car or on a walk on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. I appreciate everybody who has subscribed to the show. We've seen a couple numbers go up in different categories, so I appreciate you very, very much, as always, for joining the show. What are we going to do on a Monday? Oh, my gosh. It wasn't like it was a busy weekend. It really wasn't that busy of a weekend, but there was a lot of news going on. If you joined us on Thursday and on Friday, we talked Alabama football recruiting, and that's exactly where we're going to pick up the pieces today as we recap the weekend just in two different aspects. We're going to talk about two different commits that Alabama received over the weekend. On Saturday, receiving a commit from Chuck McDonald, class of 2025 cornerback. Abby, you need to lay down right there. I'm talking to the people. It's okay. You're sweet. The dog wants to be involved in the show today, apparently, and that's A-okay. We're going to talk about Chuck McDonald, class of 2025 cornerback out of Mater Dei High School, and we're going to talk about Michael Carroll, class of 2025 offensive lineman out of Chuck's. Out of, what is his name? Chuck, Central Buck East in Pennsylvania, one of the better offensive linemen in Pennsylvania. We're also going to talk about Na'eem Offord and his recruiting weekend this past weekend, where Alabama stands with him. Obviously, he's been committed to Ohio State since February. I don't know if this weekend moved him off of that commitment or not. Now, obviously, I could be wrong, and I can always things can change in recruiting. But we'll talk about Na'eem Offord, Dijon Lee, and we'll wrap it up with a little Dan Hurley conversation, as Dan Hurley has made his decision to stay with the UConn Huskies. We're going to talk about that through the lens of Alabama basketball. And that's going to be the show today. If you want to comment, jump in and join the show, send me a comment, question, query, or complaint. You can do that on those social media machines at Joe Gaither6 on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. You can jump in and be a part of the show. So let's start with Chuck McDonald. And what we're going to do is we're going to pop up his huddle tape on the back end. So if you're watching us on the Twitter machine, Facebook, or YouTube, you can see Chuck McDonald. It's his highlights from huddle as the 6 foot, 190-pound cornerback committed to Alabama on Saturday. Now, he jumped into Alabama, and you can see him here playing the slot and playing outside for Mater Dei. He's got nice size for a cornerback. We kind of teased his commitment on Thursday and Friday. He's ranked the number 7 player in the state of California. He's ranked the number 9 cornerback in the entire class of 2025. He played, 13 games for Mater Dei last season. He had 34 tackles, 7 pass defense, 1 interception, and 1 fumble recovery. The highlight tape, if you're watching us, started with his interception, and you'll see this fumble recovery later in the tape. What you see out of Chuck McDonald, I mean, obviously, first, you got to understand this is highlight tape. So are you going to see any of his lowlights? No. But everything you're going to see right here, and the same thing for Michael Carroll, is a cornerback who, in my opinion, shows good ability playing inside and outside. I like his eye control because he keeps his eyes on the receivers and plays the ball in the air. You can watch him during his junior season. He's not a very grabby cornerback. He's not playing the receiver before the ball gets to him. So he's not at least in these clips. He's not drawing penalties for Mater Dei. So really, really a good trait to have as a defensive back. I think you see him in these clips playing the ball in the air nicely, but really, I mean, he's not taking a whole lot of risks. You're seeing a lot of these clips. He's not taking a whole lot of risks when the ball's in the air. Obviously, you want to have interceptions when you can get them, but if you're covering the wide receiver and when the ball is coming to you, making the pass breakups, then you're doing your job. I think he's playing wide receivers very well, and he's contesting the catches. Now, what you're seeing here is somebody who's going to have to continue to develop, but I think Alabama's making a very interesting move here with modern day. Look through the last handful of years. You bring in Tommy Brown as an offensive lineman, and yes, he didn't really get a hold of starting time, and he transferred to Colorado. You brought in Bryce Young, and oh my gosh, it speaks for himself. Bryce Young, the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, was absolutely incredible here at Alabama. There's your fumble return that he returned all the way back to the 5-yard line for modern day. But Bryce Young, Tommy Brown, and then I know Eli Ricks was a transfer from LSU, but transferred from LSU to Alabama by way of modern day. And same thing with Damani Jackson this past spring. Damani Jackson is probably going to be your starting cornerback this season. And in the class of 2024, bringing in Xavier Brown. So when Chuck McDonald comes to campus probably next spring, he's probably going to be an early enrollee. That's become the trend. But when he comes to Alabama next spring, he gets ready for spring practice. He's going to have his buddy Xavier Brown, who he played with 2 seasons ago. This season, the season that we're looking at the tape on, this 2023 season, right? Yeah, because he's a 24 enrollee. So you're seeing tape with Xavier Brown and Chuck McDonald on the field. Now Xavier Brown is here, and he's made a pretty nice little impact. I think he had a very good spring practice, and I think he's going to end up being a very good player for Alabama. Damani Jackson, he's going to play this coming up season and very likely will go to the NFL after just 1 year in Tuscaloosa. But if he decides, okay, it didn't really work out or some circumstances don't go his way this year in Tuscaloosa, he could be back. So just would be crazy for Chuck McDonald's freshman year to come in and play with. Now, he wouldn't have played with Damani very much, if at all. Damani's a class of 2022 high school graduate. So this is Chuck McDonald at 25. He would have been a freshman, right? He would have been a freshman or an 8th grader in Damani Jackson's senior season. But I think it's just incredible how Alabama has turned modern day high school. Now, obviously, they're not getting every recruit out of modern day, but they're bringing in a lot of the premier recruits out of modern day. And you've got a linebacker out there with modern day as well, who could be Abdul Sanders, who could be committing to Alabama as well. So while you'd like to see or you love the in-state talent here at Alabama, modern day is a huge program in California. It's a massive program in California. They're playing high-level football. You can see the Pac-12 logo right there as they're playing in the Coliseum from time to time. Like, they're playing high-level California football. Now, it's not Texas, but it's pretty it's what? You can debate whether it's Florida or California or Georgia as that next best high school state for high school football, but it's in that class. And so Alabama getting a big win with Chuck McDonald. He becomes the second cornerback commit in the class. Zamir Smith is listed as an athlete for most of these recruiting services, 24/7 and on 3, but Zamir Smith is probably going to be a cornerback in college. And so Chuck McDonald and Zamir Smith really get your defensive back class rolling from an Alabama perspective. I like this guy. But I think that there's still even more room for Alabama to do more damage in the cornerback with the cornerback class. When you talk about Dijon Lee, and we'll talk about Na'eem Offord here in just a minute, as Na'eem Offord was a part of this past weekend's recruiting visit. But shoot, if you just end up with Chuck McDonald and Zamir Smith as your 2 corners and you don't add to it, I think they will add to it, the Crimson Tide, but I think they will. But if you don't, I think you're still in a pretty nice little position here with Chuck McDonald. He's a physical player. He comes from a high-level football program, and I think that Alabama scored a pretty big win this past weekend, getting Chuck McDonald's commitment. Now, Chuck McDonald's commitment bumped Alabama up from 8 in the country to number 4. And then Alabama jumped from 4 to 3 today with the addition of Michael Carroll. Let's talk about Michael Carroll. Michael Carroll, number 3 offensive lineman, interior offensive lineman in the country. He's ranked as a 4-star. He's 6'6", 315 pounds. His huddle tape claims 37 pancake blocks last year as a junior. And look at this guy play. Oh my gosh. He's playing a lot of left guard. He's playing a lot of defensive end / tackle. Defensive tackle on the defensive side of the ball. He also, you look him up, he's a high school wrestler in Pennsylvania, and that makes perfect sense when you're watching his tape. And then you think about, oh my gosh, he's got really good feet. He's really nimble out there, and he's getting after it. And you look at his family tree. His father, Michael Carroll, as well, played linebacker at Penn State. His mother played basketball. Letitia Carroll played basketball at Michigan State. And so he looks like kind of a basketball, nice quick feet, but he's got a big old body. 6'8" football in Pennsylvania. And like I said, he's a wrestler, plays defensive line as well as offensive line. And what do you see on his tape? I think he's very, very physical. He's got very good hands. You can see that on the defensive side of the football, but also on the offensive side as well, especially when he's pulling and getting out into space. Look, this Central Bucks East High School is getting him out in space a lot. He's pulling from the left guard position. He's pulling across the line of scrimmage, and he's pulling to the short side of the line of scrimmage. He's out in the screen game action as well. This is a guy that, I know that he's a 4-star lineman, but maybe he's getting a little bit of, not as much love as he needs to, because who cares about offensive guard? It's not a glamour position. But I care about offensive guard. I think the offensive guards are a lot of fun to watch because they're tone setters on your offense. You think about Tyler Booker and you think about Jaden Roberts this season, and both of those guys looking to set the tone for the Kalen DeBoer offense. I think it's very, very exciting. And this guy looks like honestly, a little bit like Jaden Roberts in his physicality. I think that he's going to have to work on, and this is natural for a high schooler. He's got to work on his pad level, because you look at him in his tape and you see, okay, he's a lot bigger than a lot of his opposition. And so maybe his technique doesn't have to be as good. It's not bad. It's not bad technique. I'm not saying that at all, but you're going to have to get your pad level just a little bit lower when you get to the college game. Here you see him leading through the hole, and the running back getting 30 yards there, and he's leading the way all the way through it. You see him on the offensive line as a finisher. Once he gets his hands on the opposing player, he's taking them to the ground more often than not, as noted by the 37 pancake blocks listed right at the start of his huddle tape. I think that Alabama's getting a really good offensive lineman right here. Now, he's the first offensive lineman in the class. You're up to what? 13 total commits in the class of 2025. And really, you're rolling here. This is 3 commits in the span of 7 days. So when did Keelan Russell commit? Was that a Tuesday or Wednesday? So that's 3 commits in a span of right at 7 days. And I think Alabama is on the cusp of adding even more. You look at these guys recruiting, you look at Courtney Morgan, and you look at really, I think that this recruiting staff, this football staff is on fire on the recruiting trail. Alabama just had its second big weekend of the summer. There's going to be 2 more coming up in succession, and they're going to be loaded as well. What you have 11 official visitors this past weekend, 12 official visitors the weekend prior. You're going to be loaded up with double-digit official visitors this coming weekend and the next here at the Capstone. And so it's a big time for Kalen DeBoer and really both sides of the ball, Kane Womack and Courtney Morgan recruiting. And it's just funny. It's just funny to me because now with 13 commits, Alabama's listed as number 3 in the country with this class of 2025, according to the 24/7 rankings. And people talking about, Kalen DeBoer, can he recruit the South? Kalen DeBoer, can he recruit to Alabama? Husky Harsin, he's not going to know anybody. And, okay, you look at these 2 most recent commits, and really these 3 most recent commits. It's Pennsylvania with Michael Carroll, is Texas with Keelan Russell, is California with Chuck McDonald. Is that the South? No, it's not the South. I'm well aware of that. But you just continue to further the brand that Nick Saban built. It's not just we're only recruiting Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, and Florida. That's it. No, Nick Saban built the Crimson Tide to a national brand. And really, I mean, you were recruiting at a national level a little bit before that. But once Nick Saban really took over, Alabama recruited coast to coast from north to south. And really, even Coach Saban recruiting internationally. You saw that most recently with Stephen Buamua out of Canada and Justin Okoronkwo out of Germany. Like you're getting guys from wherever you want. Olasa Lennon out of Finland by way of Connecticut. Like you're getting guys all over the country. So Kalen DeBoer, in my opinion, is proving a lot of doubters wrong. And I felt like, okay, maybe it was just hopeful from rival fan bases saying, oh, Alabama's going to fall off. Alabama can't recruit. I mean, look, we know that Kalen DeBoer has only been coaching Power 5 football for a handful of years. But again, he's gone, 104-12 over the course of his time as a head coach, going from Sioux Falls to Fresno State to Washington. It's not like Alabama went out and hired a bum. It's not like Alabama went out and hired a coach that didn't know what he was doing or didn't have success. I think people who really bagged on Kalen DeBoer and really bagged on his recruiting, and there was a lot of people that bagged on him, especially when you had, a bunch of guys transfer out right after the coaching change. And, all right, you didn't hit on every transfer in the transfer portal. I honestly think that Kalen DeBoer was very selective in the transfer portal based on scholarship limitations. And anytime, whether it would be whether this year that like it was, or anytime that Coach Saban was going to retire, you were going to lose guys to the transfer portal. You were going to have guys say, oh, I came to Alabama to play for Coach Saban. I'm getting out of here. That was just what was going to happen. Whether you hired Tom Landry, Bill Belichick, whether you hired Bear Bryant from the dead, like you were going to lose guys in the transfer portal after Nick Saban retired. It was just inevitable. Even if, you could have hired Kirby Smart. I mean, that's probably was not possible, but it didn't matter. My point is, it didn't matter who you hired. You could have hired the greatest coach in the world, whoever you consider the greatest coach in the world, and you were going to lose guys in the transfer portal. Does it suck to lose Caleb Downs just from a talent standpoint? Yeah, it did. But you were going to lose those guys like that anyways when Coach Saban retired, no matter who you hired to replace him. And so I think that people, especially in this day and age, you look at the instant reactions, and you look. Kalen DeBoer had guys decommit from this class of 2025. You've got guys that are out there that still have not. Javion Hilson comes to mind. You've got guys that left the class. You think about Antonio Coleman, who left the class and has now come back, the Saraland defensive lineman. Like, you had guys decommit from 2025 and from the 2026 class. It's just part of what was going to happen during transition. I think that a lot of people like to have the instant reaction of, oh, this guy decommitted. Kalen DeBoer must not like him. Kalen DeBoer must not be able to recruit. Kalen DeBoer must not be able to establish or continue relationships. No, it's just all going to take a little bit of time. And now that we have seen, when did he get hired? Was that February, late January, right? So you're February, March, April, May, June, 5 months, right? In 5 months, you have basically rebuilt the class. You looked at the class of 2025, and only a couple of those guys were Amari Turbo Rogers comes to mind, but only a couple of those guys were original Saban commits. So he's rebuilt the class, and now it's number 3 in the country. I'm sorry to all the haters who thought that. And look, this is not about shoving it in in the detractor's face, but it just is an unusual line, in my opinion, to take. Oh, Kalen DeBoer can't recruit. Oh, Kalen DeBoer is no good. He's going to fail at Alabama. What in his history suggests that he can't recruit? What in his history suggests that he was going to fail at a place like Alabama? And look, the season remains to be seen. You've got 83, 82 days until the season gets started. And yeah, we'll judge him on wins and losses and how he does against competition on the field. But for now, somebody asked me a week or so ago, Joe, how do you think it's going through the first 4 or 5 months? And you can't ask for anything more. You're always going to lose players in transition. You were always going to lose some coaches in transition. Obviously, there was a lot of talk about Travaris Robinson and him flirting with Georgia, going to Georgia, flirting with Alabama to come back and staying at Georgia. Like, you're always going to lose people. The transition was always going to be a little bit rocky sometimes. But everything in Kalen DeBoer's history has really, manifested itself so far, but it's shown that, I can work with whatever resources that I have, whether I'm at Sioux Falls and I don't have hardly any resources and I'm cutting my own grass, or I'm at Fresno State, or I'm at Indiana. Like, he has shown the ability to utilize whatever resources that he has and basically take the organization that he's at to 100% of its capacity, to max capacity. Now, of course, he would have liked to have won the national championship with Washington last year, but they operated literally the best offense in the country. And yeah, you played against Michigan, who I think probably was the best defense in the country last year. Of course, he would have liked to have won that, but he takes Washington to 2 straight Pac-12 championships and gets them to the college football playoff. Like, this is a man who has spent his entire life in football and evaluating, okay, here's what I have. Here's the way to take these, these resources and maximize them and thus put a winning product on the field. And so far, without playing a game, and obviously when games get played, adjustments will be made to people's opinions. But so far through 5 months, he's taken look, Nick Saban didn't leave the cupboard dry. You've got the loaded dining hall. You've got new weight rooms. You've got new locker rooms. Like, everything that he's utilizing, Kalen DeBoer, everything that he's utilizing right now in Tuscaloosa is the best situation, the best resources he has ever had. No disrespect to Washington or Fresno State or Indiana. Obviously, they're operating. 2 of those programs are Power 5 programs. But let's not pretend like Washington and Indiana have the exact same resources for their football program that Alabama does. Well, let's not be dumb here. He has walked into a place where he has more resources than he's ever had. And he's come from a mindset of, doing more with less. So it's just foolish, in my opinion, for people to have said, he's going to fail. He's not going to be able to recruit. He's not going to be able to get to know people in the South. Look, you walk in, and I think the staff experienced this concept the first couple of weeks on the recruiting trail. You walk into a high school with the Alabama A in the South, and okay, you're not Nick Saban, but obviously Greg Byrne trusts you to further this thing, and Greg Byrne's track record of hiring has been really, really strong. So obviously you know what you're doing. You were just in the national championship game, and you've been tasked to further this program. You walk it's not like he's walking into a high school and people say, we don't want to talk to you. I think it's absolutely foolish. The people taking the Husky Harskin approach. And now here we are 5 months later, you're with 13 commits in the class, and you're sitting here with the number 3 overall class in the country behind who? Ohio State and Notre Dame. You've got the best class. All right, dog's just being crazy. You've got the best class in the SEC. Like, it's going to be okay. Alabama's going to continue to recruit at a very, very high level, and so far, the proof is in the pudding. And you're still working on class of 2026. You're getting ahead of yourself. So, obviously the wins and the losses have to line up, but through 5 months, Kalen DeBoer and his staff have done an outstanding job. One interesting aspect of this past weekend, it seemed like Michael Penix, Michael Penix, the Washington, the Washington quarterback who was drafted by the Atlanta Falcons, was in the facility right here in Tuscaloosa. And obviously, he's only 3 hours away from Atlanta, his future home. But I found it very interesting that Michael Penix is at least participating in some of these recruiting discussions with quarterbacks and with future skill position players. And I think it just goes to show that Kalen DeBoer is a relationship-type coach. And these relationships have helped him attract talent at other places. And I think that it will continue to help him attract talent here in Tuscaloosa. Let's talk about 2 recruits that are kind of out there to be updated on. Na'eem Offord was on an official visit this past weekend, the number 1 player in the state of Alabama. Parker High School. Thundering Herd, plays both sides of the ball, cornerback and skill position for Parker, and very, very talented. But Na'eem Offord has been committed to Ohio State since February. We said that already, and we said that on the Friday show. There's photos from his visit. Okay, Ryan Williams is on Instagram Live going flip, 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 flip. Ryan Williams is putting the pressure on Na'eem Offord to flip from Ohio State to Alabama. Now, this could come back and end up with egg on my face, but I don't think he's going to flip. I don't think he's going to flip to any school. I think he's just enjoying the recruitment process and going to end up in the Ohio State class. Now, does that mean that Kalen DeBoer can't recruit? No, because he committed to Ohio State basically a couple of weeks after Kalen DeBoer even got hired. Some of these people creating narratives, I mean, the quarterback narrative, you're seeing it, Alabama settled. We talked about it last week, settled for Keelan Russell, the SMU player. Well, you went through the top 6 quarterbacks in the class, and look, it's almost like baseball. You start in the recruitment very, very early, especially for quarterbacks, because it's very delicate. You want to go to a place where you can play, especially as a quarterback. And so, I had to settle for Keelan Russell. Well, I'm sorry, Bryce Underwood was really not available, committed to LSU. I'm sorry, George McIntyre was really not available, committed to Tennessee. These relationships have been established before even DeBoer has got settled into his office over at the Malmore Center. So some of the timing just didn't work out with some of these recruits, and I think Na'eem Offord is one of them. Now, does that stink? Because he's probably he is one of the more talented players in the state of Alabama in the class of 2025. Yeah, it stinks to miss out on that. But it's not an indictment on Courtney Morgan. It's not an indictment on Kalen DeBoer. It's not an indictment on Maurice Linguist or Kane Womack, or pick whatever staff member that you want to talk about. It's not an indictment on them because they were put into place mid-January, and Na'eem Offord's been taking visits and establishing relationships all throughout the country, and maybe Ohio State has a nice little NIL package out there for him. Look, it's not an indictment on the Alabama staff that Na'eem Offord is very, in my opinion, unlikely to come off of his Ohio State commitment. Now, would you like him to? Of course you would. And if he does, I think it'd be a huge, huge, huge win for the Crimson Tide staff. I think it'd be a massive win. But I don't think it's something to lament over losing. You didn't get the flip. You weren't able to make the move. Well, you came in late. He's already got a dance partner, and you came in late. And yeah, you might be the best looking person at the dance, but sometimes coming in late is it works against you. You looked at some of the visits and some of the photos that have come out around the visit, and yeah, Na'eem Offord didn't always look very happy in the Alabama uniforms and in the photo shoots that they had. But I don't think it's an indication of a bad visit by any means. He gave a nice report to Joseph Hastings of On3 Sports, saying that he enjoyed his time. But I think at the end of the day, it is what it is. He's been committed to Ohio State, and okay, I get an X amount of official visits. I'm going to take one to Tuscaloosa because it's the premier program in my state. It's only an hour away. It'll be a good weekend. They'll show me a good time. I'll hang out with some buddies. I'll hang out with some players that I've known for the last handful of years. I don't think it's any deeper than that. And I don't think that it is an indictment on Kalen DeBoer and the staff if they don't get Na'eem Offord to flip. Now, it'd be nice, but I think it's unrealistic. The other cornerback is Dijon Lee. Dijon Lee is out there basically Oregon and Alabama, in my opinion. I think those are the two the two schools that are leading for his services. And look, if you end up with your cornerback class of Zamir Smith, of Chuck McDonald, and Dijon Lee, I think you brought in 3 really good cornerbacks. You look at Dijon Lee, he's like, 6'2", 6'3"? Oh, my gosh, the length on that young man is going to be very effective playing the defense. So if you miss out on Na'eem Offord, but you bring in Dijon Lee, what have you really lost? Oh, sure, you want the in-state prospect, absolutely. And there's a little bit of sense of pride there, locking down your state. But you didn't lose him, Na'eem Offord, to Auburn or to Jacksonville State or UAB or South Alabama or any other program in the state. I think that it's just maybe something for the detractors to hold on to, especially if you can get Dijon Lee. You get Dijon Lee, you get Chuck McDonald, you get Zamir Smith, and your cornerback class is looking very, very, very strong for the second year in a row. I mean, look, last year's cornerback class was extremely impressive. Jalen Mbakwe, Zay Mency, and Xavier Brown. We've seen them all three at spring practice looking like college football players. Now, obviously, we've hit on it ad nauseum, the inexperience, and that's why you bring in Deshaun Jones, and that's why you're excited about Damani Jackson maybe having a little revitalization here in Tuscaloosa. But if you're able to end up with Chuck McDonald, with Dijon Lee, and with Zamir Smith, boom, you've gone back-to-back cornerback classes with high-level talent. And so to lose out on Na'eem Offord, not really going to be that big of a deal. All right, that's going to do it for our recruiting part, and that's really going to do it for our Alabama segment. Well, we're going to continue to talk Alabama, but we're going to talk about Dan Hurley. We're going to talk about Dan Hurley and his decision. He made it official today. He made it official. He's not going to the Los Angeles Lakers. We talked about it last week when the rumors came out just a little bit that it would be a little concerning if he left UConn, that Nate Oates might be in that target zone for UConn. Now, obviously, that is not going to happen now, and that's a cause for everyone to celebrate here in Tuscaloosa. We also noted last week that Dan Hurley, if he did leave, one of the options was going to be Bruce Pearl. Look, the timing. It's just terrible timing. If you're a college basketball coach or if you're running a college basketball program, any changes at this point, it would have just been terrible. Now, I think that Nate Oates is I don't think he really would have entertained things that much with UConn. I don't. I think that they might have called him, but with the roster that he has built, and we talked about it last week, the facilities, the agreed-upon facilities from the Board of Trustees, $58 million practice facility that's getting set to get started on the southeastern corner of Coleman Coliseum, I think he's perfectly happy here. And I don't really think it would have been anything for the Alabama contingent to get that concerned about. But I do think it would have been at least a sentence, a talking point, at least a thought in the college basketball ether. Just a thought, what if we can get Nate Oates? And look, while I do honestly love the Alabama basketball program deeply to my core, I'm not an idiot. UConn is UConn and Alabama basketball is Alabama basketball. So they're operating in a little bit of two different spheres, at least prestige-wise. Maybe not for long. Nate Oates stay around another 10 years, bring in a national title or two. Maybe not for long, but for now, UConn is obviously operating at a much higher level, or has been operating at a much higher level over the course of the last 20 years. But Dan Hurley doesn't go. You're seeing reports. What was it? Let me make sure I have it right. 6 years, right? 6 years. Right there. 6 years, $70 million. Is that right? Yeah. 6 years, $70 million was the offer from the LA Lakers. And when I saw that come in, I thought, they didn't really even want Dan Hurley. You were hearing over the week that they were prepared to make an overwhelming offer to Dan Hurley. And then it comes out today, after he basically has decided I'm staying, that the offer was 6 years, $70 million. And it makes me think, what? I mean, let's go back. Let's go back to right around the Final Four when Kentucky was looking for a coach, and people were talking about, Nate Oates and Dan Hurley, and obviously Nate Oates rebuffed that, and part of that was this practice facility. Part of the reason was this practice facility was agreed upon. But Kentucky offers Dan Hurley 8 years, $100 million. All right, he turns it down. Wow, that's really, really big of Dan Hurley to turn down that level of money, especially in Kentucky and Lexington. $100 million in Lexington, goes a long, long way. But you turn it down, no problem. What's going through the LA Lakers' brains by saying, you turned down 8 years, $100 million in Kentucky. Why don't you come here for 6 years, $70 million? Look, I don't really want to get political about the cost of living in California and everything that goes along with it, but you lowballed him. You lowballed him, and you expected him to leave a place where he has basically the world at his fingertips. You look at everything that they've done at UConn and his recruiting over the last couple of years, and he's got everything he wants at UConn. And you're going to offer him, what, 6 years, $70 million? What did it come out to be? I think Darren Norvell tweeted out that it was coming out to be $6 million after taxes per year. And you look at UConn's newest offer to Dan Hurley, and it's what, 6 years, $50 million. And you say, okay, on the surface, 50 million is less than 70, Joe. Yes, obviously, with the basic math. But his current deal was 6 years, 30-something million dollars. So it's a $20 million raise up there in stores. And Darren Ravel basically compared the after taxes rate. I think it turns out to be $4.7 million a year for Dan Hurley to stay at UConn. Versus what, $6 million a year to live in LA. To live in LA, to deal with LeBron James, and yes, deal with. And look, I liked LeBron James for a long, long time, but his career has taken a very interesting turn, in my opinion. An interesting turn of, I want to be in control and I want to have it my way or the highway. And basically, LeBron has hijacked the LA Lakers. He's hijacked the buses, and he is the de facto general manager. Obviously, he's not going to say that, but that's really what's going on there. And so this offer, 6 years, $70 million from the LA Lakers to Dan Hurley, just screams, we don't really want you. We just wanted to create a media storm to basically give us coverage for when we actually hire JJ Redick. And look, this isn't really an NBA show, but JJ Redick is just going to be LeBron's podcast buddy, and the two of them are going to operate as co-coaches, essentially. And I know Antonio Brown has been very crazy on social media, especially post-retirement, and Antonio Brown is just a bleepster. He just stirs stuff up and has a lot of distasteful takes. We'll say that. But 6 weeks ago, something in that range, when the Lakers season ended and after they fired Darvin Ham, Antonio Brown was very quick to say that they're going to hire J.J. Redick, they're going to draft Bronny James, and they're going to run it back. Well, at this point, it seems like crazy Antonio Brown is spot on. CTESPN is spot on. And so I think you're seeing the LA Lakers try to save face by, we're going after the top college coach in the country. But you didn't really go after him if you only offered to make him, the fifth highest paid coach in basketball. That's behind Monty Williams with the Detroit Pistons. That's behind Eric Spoelstra with Miami Heat. It's behind Steve Kerr. It's behind Tyronn Lue. It's behind Greg Popovich. And so, okay, I know he doesn't have NBA success, but this is a top-level basketball coach. And you want him to leave a blue blood program for not that great. I mean, it's great money. $70 million over 6 years is great money to you, the listener, and to me, the talker. But for somebody who's sitting there and basically has the world at his fingertips in stores, it's not that great of money. So Dan Hurley does stay with UConn. I think that the Lakers basically told on themselves without telling on themselves with their contract offer. I think they really weren't serious the entire time. I believe that it was, you fly out here, you take a meeting, you let us pitch you an offer, and we can say we tried. You can turn us down and go back to stores and use it as a contract negotiation point for you and your extension at UConn, which is apparently very close on the 1 yard line. So Dan Hurley gets what he wants, more leverage with the UConn administration, and the Lakers can say that they tried. And all this for us, the Alabama fan, is to say NATO is staying at home. And people can talk about it all they want. If Dan Hurley leaves, NATO is the best basketball coach in the country. They can have that debate for sure. But for me, and maybe I'm crazy and sadistic, I'm happy that Dan Hurley's staying. I'm happy. I would love, and I know what the results have been the last two seasons when Alabama has played UConn. I know you took them to the 12-minute mark in a close game in the Final Four, and then lost. Then lost by double digits. You lost pretty handily. You got your butt kicked, honestly, in the Phil Knight Invitational 2 seasons ago to the eventual national champions. I know UConn's basically wiped the floor with Alabama over the last 2 years. But with the talent that Alabama has at this current moment, this roster, I think you want to have the dragon out there. You want to have the king out there. You want to have UConn as, oh, that's the bar you're reaching for. And look, if Dan Hurley had left, would they still be the bar? Would they still be the standard? Yes, they would be. They're the two-time national champions. But a little luster would have been lost. And yeah, maybe I'm sadistic, but I'm hopeful, or I'm excited about the opportunity. I'm excited about the prospect of, oh, Nate Oates can finally slay that dragon, can dethrone the king that is Dan Hurley with the roster that you have right now. So I'm excited about this basketball season. I'm happy from a personal standpoint that Dan Hurley is staying in UConn. Firstly, because it means that there's not any dominoes that come after Dan Hurley's leaving. You know, the dominoes would be who replaces him. Is it Nate Oates? Is it Bruce Pearl? Is it someone else? You're going off the board, and then you're seeing transfer portal open across the country. If Dan Hurley had left, the UConn roster would have 30 days to decide if they're going into the transfer portal or not, and thus the big wheel just spins and spins and spins and spins. You experienced it a bit this spring with football with Nick Saban and some of these other coaches leaving, thus opening transfer portal windows at their university. I think it's a positive thing for college basketball that Dan Hurley is staying. You know, you keep that roster intact. You keep that dynasty intact. Obviously, they're going to be blue bloods whether Dan Hurley is there or not based on their last 20 years of history. But I think it's just a positive thing on the whole for basketball that Dan Hurley is staying. Where do the Lakers go? I don't care. I do think it's going to be J.J. Redick, but I really don't care. I think LeBron has neutered the luster and lure of the LA Lakers. When I was a kid, it was Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, Rick Fox, Robert Horry. It was that era of the Lakers, the Derek Fisher with Phil Jackson on the sidelines. And look, it felt to me as a child like, oh, this is what the 80s must have felt like. Oh, LA seems like a long, long way away from those times of winning multiple championships in a row. What did they win? 3 in a row with the Kobe and Shaq days. It seemed like they're a long, long way away from that. From a personal standpoint, happy that Dan Hurley is staying with the UConn Huskies, and that makes me even more excited about college basketball season because Nate Oates and Alabama basketball, you still have that bar to reach. You still have that king to chase down and hopefully slay. You still have that dragon out there to go get, and that makes me very, very excited for the Alabama basketball season. So that's going to do it for our show today. When we come back tomorrow, we'll keep talking about Alabama topics. We'll find what else is out there. We haven't predicted Alabama's season yet by game like we did last week with Mississippi State and with Missouri. We'll do that soon. We'll do that probably on the next day that doesn't have any news going along with it, any news to talk about. We're going to catch up with a lot of our friends on the Walsh Writing Network this week. As always, we're going to catch up with Jacob Bain. We'll catch up with Justice Sandel again to talk Miami. Perhaps we'll talk to Kim Rankin about her new position with our Boston College website. We'll talk about all these things and more. Matt Guzman with the San Antonio Spurs. Austin Bidwell with the Kansas City Royals. The Royals had a really good weekend, almost a great weekend by sweeping the Mariners, but a really good weekend for the Royals. And so we'll talk to Austin Bidwell about that in the coming week. I appreciate everybody who's watched the show today. You watched us on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. You watched us on the BamaCentral YouTube channel at BamaCentral or on my social medias at Joe Gaither 6. If you're walking around and or listening to us in the car, I appreciate you listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. I do this for you guys and try to do the best I can. So I appreciate everybody who chimes in with support each and every day. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow right here on the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral.